Great. So if you've been into Schmidt Resources over the past week looking for upkeep, you couldn't find it. It's been removed. We have moved away from the product upkeep for our maintenance requests, and we're going to move forward with a Google form. So I'm going to go ahead and show you that in a minute, but I did want to point that out first because upkeep is no longer being utilized. We've removed the link. So if you have it bookmarked or whatnot on your systems, we're going to ask that you please remove that because we will no longer be using that. Along with that, if you have the old purchase rec bookmarked on your browser, or maybe you have it as an icon on your desktop, if you could please go ahead and remove that, that would be great. We did notice we had one or two new submissions on the old sheets come through over the last week, which is no problem because, today is the training. So, but if you do have those old links bookmarked, please go ahead and remove those, and then you will be able to access the new one via Schmidt Resources. So if you jump into the ASC square, like you always have before, and you go to the purchase requisition form square here. If you're a manager on the call in the manager square, you have the same link to the purchase rec form, takes you to the same landing page. So when you click on that, it brings you into here. So if you recall before, we had Michigan, we had Ohio, we had Florida, we had 3 individual purchase rec request forms. We now have one. So this is really going to streamline the process. We are one company now. We have torn down all of our regional walls. And so with that, we have one form. So you'll see right here, purchase requisition form. And when you click on that to open, it looks slightly different, not a big difference. A lot of the questions are all the same. If you click here for the job aid, it does kind of walk you through some of the process. So that's a good place to find that. I believe it's in the ASC drive as well, but it's really easy to get to it when you're in there. And Michelle, I'll get that updated. I apologize, I forgot that step, but we'll get that updated for the C21 side as well. So the job aid is here. When you pop that open, you'll see it kind of walks you through what that looks like. And you can see it was just updated last month. So all of that is now updated right here via this link. Now, what does that look like on the other side? So previously, Jason would meet with the RVPs, presidents would meet with RVPs, and these would kind of be approved through that process. Each region was slightly different with time cadence. The good thing with the new process now is once a week, Jason meets with his leadership team. Felicia, Steve Carr, Steve Ladrito, Lynn Kripe, Bernie Merkel, Rob West, the whole leadership team meets once a week, and they're going to be actually reviewing these purchase requisition requests. Kristen Gray in accounts payable still is very much part of the process as well. Obviously, every week, some things come up. So if you have something that has to be expedited, I would just go ahead and get with your local DSG, your local broker, your local sales manager, your RSC, Jessica, Kelly, myself. If we need to expedite some of these things, don't hesitate to reach out. But these requests will be reviewed every week. Obviously, if there's more questions on what the request was, either Kristen or Jason and somebody on his team will reach out and get more details on that. But that is our new purchase rec process. You'll still get a number back. So if you are ordering something that needs to be ordered on Amazon, process is the same. Kristen will send you the PO number and you get that to whoever was previously doing your ordering for you, whether it was myself or Kelly or somebody on the team. If you're doing something with a marketing group, that process as of today has not changed. You'll see that those links are still down here at the bottom. And so you may have to take your PO number and order business cards or whatever it might be through that process. Now, I will say that process is going to be changing slightly. Probably won't happen until the end of the year, early January, but that process is being looked at as well. But as of today, that stays the same. So again, purchase rec, when you pop into the form, you'll see that the job aid is up here at the top. And again, that process, that cadence is once a week. Currently, his meetings are on Wednesdays. Obviously, we had our sales meeting yesterday, so they didn't meet, but they will be addressing all of these requests via that cadence of the leadership meeting. Now, the next thing that has changed, and because we, again, no longer have upkeep, I like to say it a few times in case you were on the phone, we no longer have upkeep. So if you have a maintenance request for your offices, there's a new process and it's pretty different than what we had. So this is going to be a learning opportunity for everyone. We're going to have to work through some bumps, along the way. Like I always say, we're a continuous improvement company and we really want your feedback as we work through some of these changes. So the maintenance requisition form. So anything you think about, if you have a broken toilet, if a bird flew into your window and cracked it, if you notice that your sidewalk outside has a crack in it, if the heat in the AC doesn't seem to be working correctly, all the way up to, this wall is super scuffed. We really think it needs to be freshened up and could use some paint. All of those things, anything to do with your office building, the facility, can be used the maintenance requisition form. So when you click on that, you'll see it just like the purchase rack. It's a Google form. It will populate a Google sheet for tracking on the back end. There's also a job aid here. I'm sorry, it's our SOP, our standard operating procedure is linked through right here at the top. And this is going to be important as we learn how this new process works. It's going to be heavily relied on the local staff, you guys, the ASCs, the RSCs, our sales managers, brokers, team leads, DSGs. The ops team is small but mighty. So the ops team is Jessica Bablinski and Kelly Ewing and myself. So physically, we can't be in these offices. We don't have the relationship with the local vendor. So we're here to help and assist, but it's really going to run through you as the local person that is there at the office. You know when you're there, so you can schedule the vendor. We're here to help you along the way. And as we work through this process, like I said, we're going to have to work out some kinks, but we're pretty excited about being able to give that accountability back to the local office, because again, you are there. You'll know when the work was done. You'll be able to make sure that you secure the invoice. Sometimes we get invoices and we don't even know if the work's been done. So it doesn't work really well to pay them if we don't even know the work's been done. So this new process will really put some of that accountability back in the local offices. So you'll see the form is pretty straightforward: office location, your name, your email address, what the maintenance need is. The cool new part here that Google allows us to do is actually upload photos that will then be sent directly to us as the team. So you'll see that you can upload photos. Maybe you had a tree come down in the yard, it's covering a parking lot. You need to take a photo of it, get it over to us, and you can add the file there. Vendor name, if you have one, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And have you used the vendor before? You may not know. Maybe you're newer and you don't know. Maybe you weren't there last year when the AC needed to be serviced. That's okay. But if you do know who it was, if you know Bob's Plumbing came, 3 months ago and fixed the toilet, so Bob's Plumbing is our vendor, you can go ahead and add that in there. And do you have the updated W-9 and COI? If not, that's okay. We're going to talk through what that looks like here in a minute, but this will allow you to also upload that certification, the W-9 and the COI, the certificate of insurance. We'll talk through who needs that and why we need that here in a minute. And then, do you already have a quote? Because sometimes you'll do that, right? Sometimes you're like, hey, this was really looking shabby. It really could use a paint and coat. I'm going to go ahead and get a quote. I know this guy did work for us before. I already have his W-9 and COI. And then that's okay. You can go ahead and send that into us right here. And then you click submit. So this form goes to Jessica, Kelly, and I, like I mentioned, and we'll review them. Now, obviously, if you're sitting in Northern Michigan and it's December 15th and it's -5 degrees out and your heat goes out, immediately call your vendor. Absolutely, by all means, call your vendor. Please still fill out the form, and I'll explain why in a minute, but please go ahead and fill out the form, but call your vendor. Your toilet busted and you have water gushing down the hallway, call Bob's Plumbing. Call the vendor right away on those emergencies. If you need to get the carpets cleaned, if you need to request if something can be painted, if you have a drippy faucet that's just really getting annoying, but it's not, gushing, those are the things that you want to put the request through on the front end. Anything major too, especially like AC units, heating units, sometimes that's not us to fix. Sometimes us as the tenant needs to reach out to the landlord. So that's why it's important that all of the requests get put through the form, whether or not you've already had to call in a vendor. And that's just to help us track that for lease purposes, and also help us track the files for those W-9s and for those COIs, because when the yearly audit comes out, it's been a really cumbersome process for accounting and HR to get those things to the auditors. And this process will allow Jessica, Kelly, and myself to really make sure that we have it organized, up to date, and accurate for everybody involved. So that's the form. If you don't have anything to upload, if you don't have photos, if you don't have the COI or W-9, you're just getting the ball rolling, that's okay. Get the form over and we'll take it from there. So as I mentioned, there is the standard operating procedure linked through to the top. So when you click on that, you'll see that it is a Google Doc. And it's going to walk you through what that process looks like. So you're going to hear us use the term staff, because that could be anything from an ASC, an RSC, like I mentioned. It could be a DSG. Each office has a subset of a team. They have a team behind them. And so we're going to be able to work through who's really going to take lead on this. If we have a gallery office that's maybe unmanned, it's probably going to be an ASC sitting elsewhere that's tasked with that office. If it's an office where an ASC is out on vacation, it could be the broker or the sales manager that can then go through this process. So it's whoever's physically going to be in that office that's really going to help us be able to do these facility maintenance requests remotely, since we're not physically there. So we're going to use the word staff. That's kind of what that means. It could be somebody in accounting. It could be a commission specialist that sits in that location. It just depends on who physically is there in the office. So we have facility sheets for all of you. We're not quite ready to send them out yet, but we will be. We'll be sending them out. They are living, breathing documents. So there may not be 100% accuracy on them, but we'll be able to send those out to you. So for example, on the Michigan side here, you'll see there's a tab for each office. It gives the office information at the top, and then it's going to list through whoever the vendors are. Could be your cleaner, could be your plumber, could be your HVAC people. This will allow you to let you know who you can call if you are new to the office, or maybe you've just never been involved in it before. You're going to have access to these facility sheets. Now, again, they are living documents, so they may need to be updated. It may be somebody that retired. Maybe they no longer are a plumber, so we need to find a new vendor. If you don't have a vendor and you need help, that's what we're here for. We can help you get there. We can call other assets. We rely heavily on our agents because they're in this all the time. They're constantly referring people. So we may need to make a few phone calls and find a new vendor, but that's okay. We can help you with that as well. But these facility sheets are nice because they'll be able to show who exactly you've been using in the past, what that contact phone number is, if there is one, and we're going to be updating this as we continue on. So first part of the facility standard operating procedure, figure out what the need is. Obviously, if your heat goes out, that's an obvious need, right? And if you don't know if you should put in a request, just reach out. Chat Jessica, Kelly, or I, call me, email, whatever it might be, and we'll help you walk you through that. So facility sheets will be localized there for you guys to have to be able to review who those vendors are. And then if it is something outside of an emergency, we'll ask that you get with those vendors, maybe get 2 quotes. Again, it depends what the project is. If it's as simple as fixing a banister on the stairs because we need to make sure that it's secure, probably don't need 2 quotes, right? That's probably a 1 quote handyman. Make sure he has his W-9 and COI and we can move forward. So it's just going to kind of depend on the need. So we want to make sure that we are able to get the quotes if necessary and the W-9 and certificate of insurance. And this kind of walks you through that maintenance purchase requisition form. They kind of link to each other because depending on how you get to the SOP, you may not have already had the form open. Talks through the need for photos when necessary, vendor quote when necessary, W-9, anybody we pay, every single person we pay for any type of work needs a W-9. That is standard, have to have it. If we're paying anybody a dime, we have to have a W-9. Now, general liability insurance and workers' comp, if it's a sole proprietor, it's one person, it's Carrie's handyman service, and Carrie comes and Carrie does the paint. I don't, by the way, I hate painting. And I do that myself. I have no employees. I don't need the workers' comp insurance. I'm a sole proprietor. If you have a bigger company, you have a plumber that has 15 plumbers and they have, the leadership team. So they have multiple employees, even if it's just 2, we have to have that COI that covers their workers' comp. Our workers' comp company audits us. And if we don't have that accurate, that hasn't expired on file, we can be dinged for that because our workers' comp then assumes that if somebody's coming into our offices that we're paying and they don't have their own, our workers' comp could be held responsible. So that's why we need to really make sure that these forms are organized and on file and not expired. If Bob's Plumbing fixed the toilet 2 years ago and you had a COI back then, those only last 12 months. We need to make sure that we get a new one with the new date showing the expiration date past the last time that they visited our offices. So that's where we can really help you with some of those things. And that's why we are asking that all requests, no matter how big or small, go through that maintenance request form. Once you have your purchase rec, you've gotten approval, you can move forward. We'll rely on you to go ahead and schedule that because again, you take lunch from noon to 1. We may not know that. So you will rely on you to schedule that vendor so that you can get them in the office when they're able to have access and they're able to have somebody there that they can talk to. And then again, once that invoice is received, sometimes it goes directly to accounting. Sometimes it goes to you guys. We'll make sure we get that into the accounting payable process. make sure that that W-9 is on file so they can get paid accurately. And then we'll be able to put a bow on that whole process and it will be done. Now, if it's more of a major capital improvement, you had a tree come down, there's a hole in your roof, or there's structural damage, you notice there's a crack in the foundation, HVAC unit completely got fried. Those are major capital improvements. Sometimes you need to do a kitchen remodel, the requests come through. Those requests can still be put through the maintenance request form. That allows us to track it, but that is a much longer, lengthier process. We'll reach out to vendors, we'll get quotes, we'll work with leadership, we'll make sure that we know what the lease states, whose responsibility, is it us as the tenant? Is it the landlord? Is it a related landlord? There's a lot of different moving pieces to that whole process when it comes to those bigger repairs, those bigger capital improvement requests. So typically those conversations happen even before the form is filled out. So if you're unaware of where we're at, maybe with the current process, you don't need to fill out the form now. Come to us, we'll talk through it. We'll most likely we're tracking it on our sheet. But moving forward, any of those requests, even if leadership have had conversations, eventually that will need to go into the form so that we can track it, make sure we're getting the quotes when necessary, and make sure we're getting that documentation on file and make sure that it's not expired. I do have a question here, so let me go ahead and pop that open. The question was, there was a list of items not yet repaired and upkeep, and did they need to put them on the new form? Mike, I will offline that with you. Jessica has a list of what she's been working on with you, so I don't think we need to put the request through, but we'll follow up with you after the call on that. We were able to extract everything out of upkeep, so we have all of the data out of there. So we'll be working through this transition to make sure that we have everything historic that we need and then move forward with the new process. So great question, and we'll make sure we follow up with you on that. So again, if you're in the purchase rec form, you can get to both the purchase rec form and the maintenance rec form. And then at the top of both of those is one has the job aid, one has the standard operating procedure. It'll walk through these things for you. And then again, you don't have access today to the facility sheet, but we'll be updating those, Kelly, Jessica, and I, and we'll be getting those out. Now, it is a Google Sheet. You will have the authority to edit them because you may add a vendor, you may delete a vendor, but we are asking that you only use your tab. Obviously, it's a lot easier to keep these all together and not individual Google Sheets. If we notice it's a problem, if things are accidentally being deleted or whatnot, we'll probably tweak that process. But for now, that's what we're going to be able to do. And again, we'll get these links out to you either later today or tomorrow. That will help you know who your vendors are so that if you do have a need, you'll fill out the form, but you may have already, spoke with the vendor. You may have already gotten a quote from the vendor, and then we'll be able to move forward with that purchase request. Great question, Risa. So yeah, so she would typically email Kelly. Kelly would take care of the need. So in lieu of the emails, which we all get a million emails, right? Go ahead and fill out the form for those type of requests. So if you think of anything that you used to email for, if you used to pick up the phone and call, still by all means do, especially if it's an emergency. Because again, we're not here to stop the process. If it's an emergency, please by all means go ahead and get it taken care of, then fill out the form so that we can assist on making sure everything else is buttoned up. But if you were going to email Kelly or Jessica or myself or something, go ahead and put it on the form. That way you have 3 sets of eyeballs on it as opposed to 1. So it's going to be a really great way that makes sure that nothing falls through the cracks. Again, we're all super accessible. So if you want to email us to ask us questions ahead of filling out the form or call us, that's okay too. But yeah, any request should now go through that maintenance form. Great question. So Maria's question was in Paradise. They used to go through another staff person because they kind of have an in-house management person. Go ahead and put it on the form for now. We'll work with Jennifer on that, and we'll make sure that we get with her to get those things scheduled. That is a little bit different because we do have an employee on staff that does some of those things. We don't have to worry about W-9s or COIs or anything like that. But let's go ahead and put it on the form for now, and then we'll work with Jennifer to make sure that it's not tripping up her process, and we'll get that smoothed out. So great question, Maria. Yep, Don, this will be recorded. So if you were pulled away, if an agent needed help, which is super important, we know, or if you had to take a phone call, this recording will go up on the Schmidt Video Classroom in the BlueSync playlist after the call. Depending, it takes some time to render, but we'll get that up there. So look for that later today. Great questions. Anything else? I'll go ahead and give it a second here. Wait for anything else to come in. Or Jessica and Kelly, if you guys are on the call and you have anything to add that I may have missed, feel free to unmute.
I don't. I just want to reiterate those certificates of insurance because before there was a lot of confusion with getting those people thinking that we only needed it at the time of payment, that we had that on file when they're being paid, but it's actually when they're doing the work. So if the work is scheduled for a month out and you notice that their insurance expires before that, that won't be a viable certificate. They need to reissue another one. Once we do have them, we are trying to keep track of them when they do expire for those same vendors we use all the time. But just something to keep in mind that it's not when the vendor is paid, it's when they're doing the work. But I think you pretty much covered everything else.
Great. Thank you for that. Great question, Sherry. So any form for Paul for IT, if it's a computer, if it's a switch, obviously if you're down and it's an outage, go ahead and give them a call or text them. But if you're requesting new computer equipment, maybe your printer's broken, that can all go through the purchase rec form. We'll handle those offline. You can always call them and email them as well. But anything like that on the IT side, that can go ahead and go on the purchase rec. If you're not sure, put it on one of the forms and we'll take care of it on the back end. But the important thing is getting it on the form so that we can help track that and get that completed. But yeah, anything like that, we request you go ahead and use the purchase rec form. Good question. Okay. Well, as I mentioned, it's changed. It's new. It's a new process. We're excited about it. We love your feedback. Continuous improvement is important for us, and we need your feedback in order to do that. Obviously, it's going to take a few weeks, a couple months. Some offices don't really have a lot of maintenance requests. So you may not even have to worry about this for a couple months. And of course, we'll have to all keep refreshed on what the process is. But don't hesitate to reach out and call with questions. Kelly, Jessica, myself, any of us can help you. Michelle, I'll go ahead and get that up there in the C2 Instrument resources. And Mike, we'll look for an email follow-up from Jessica or myself on some of those open items that we had for your office location. So thanks so much for your time today. I truly appreciate it. I hope you have a great rest of your day. And it's almost the weekend. So enjoy. Bye, everyone.